The method used in problem 764 to eliminate fractions from an equation can be called fraction busters, because the multiplication of the equation by a common denominator or several of the denominators eliminates or busts the fractions. The result is an equation with no fractions. Chari is attempting to solve the equation below. What is a common denominator for these fractions? Discuss with your team how you could use the common denominator to eliminate the fractions in Chari's equation. So if we are looking for a common denominator, what I see right away is I see that we have denominators of 3, 6, and 2. And when I see that, I know that we can multiply 3 by 2 to get 6 and 2 by 3 to get 6. So in this case, for part A, we would have a least common denominator of 6. Now part B says if you have not already done so, find an equivalent equation without fractions. So I am going to go ahead and write my original equation, which is 2b over 3 minus 1/6 equals b over 2. Now, remember what we're doing with this least common denominator is multiplying everything in the equation by that. So I'm going to make it a fraction just because I think it's easiest to work with. If we have some fractions, it's easiest to work with all fractions. So I would get a 6 times 2b would give me 12b. 1 times 3 would give me 3 minus 6 times 1 would give me 6. And 1 times 6 would give me 6. And that is equal to 6 times b is 6b, and 1 times 2 is 2. So we still have fractions here. However, if you think back to the last couple problems, we can use that fraction bar as division. So 12b divided by 3 would give me 4b. Minus 6 divided by 6 would give me 1. And 6b divided by 2 would give me 3b. So I am going to subtract 4b from each side. So I'm left with 0 pair here, and then negative 1 would equal negative 1b, or just negative b. So what I can do, if you remember, I cannot have a negative variable. So what I could do is divide by negative 1 on each side, which gives me a negative 1 divided by a negative 1 would give me a positive 1, and that equals b. Okay, so we found our equivalent equation without fractions. This was our equivalent equation without fractions, so this was where part B ended, and then part C said to solve and check for your answer. So this is where part C begins. Now the last part we need to do for part C, we already solved for B, but now we need to check our answer. And a few things you want to remember when you are checking your answer is that we need to go to the original equation. So we want to go all the way back to our original. And when we plug in for B, we want to make sure that we are using parentheses. So I would have 2 parenthesis 1 end parenthesis, because that was a b in our original equation, over 3 minus 1/6 equals 1 over 2. Now, this can't be simplified any further. So if we did our math correctly and we put all of this into the calculator exactly as it's written, we should end up with 1/2 equals 1/2. That confirms that our solution is correct. Now be careful, because 1/2 is not our solution. 1 is our solution. 1/2 just verifies our check or tells us that it is correct and we have found the right solution. Now, if we ended up with something like 2 equals 1/2, then that would tell us that our solution is not correct and we had done something wrong in our math. Okay, that is all for problem 765.